Hey everyone, I thought we'd read a little bit this afternoon, this rainy afternoon in eastern North Carolina. Little Elvis and Kathy. And I've gotten to the point of the book where there are some pictures, so I thought I'd share with them if any of you guys are looking at the book, pictures. This is Kathy's family in Abilene, Texas, 1961. I'm next to Daddy. So it must be her right there. Kathy must be her mom, sister, brother. Little did she know the future she would have with the king of rock and roll. Me and Steve Martin. Kathy. Steve Martin. That's so funny. A couple of cut-ups. All right, here is B.J. Baker, publisher, with Elvis and conductor Billy Strange. Pre-recording for the comeback special. Oh. This must be a picture that Elvis shared with her because she wasn't with him yet. Posing with Nancy Sinatra and Frank Jr. on Nancy's show at the Las Vegas Hilton, 1971. First row, fourth from the left. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, there's Kathy. Yep, starting to look like Kathy. And let's see if we can find Frank Sinatra's in there somewhere, she said. Posing with Nancy. Oh, Frank Jr. Okay. Here we go. Another tour begins, and we start singing. And singing. And the little girl with the pretty high voice, Kathy Westmoreland. And singing. And singing. And singing. Aww. The crowds stand and Elvis bows. My 1977 Lincoln Continental was the last car Elvis gave away. Some of Elvis's wonderful gifts to me. There's her TLC necklace. And I'm not sure what that is. There's probably something engraved on it. I don't know. Some rings, earring. Look at that ring. Is that an earring or something right there? Oh, it's like a mouse face or something. Another ring. Definitely jewelry to wear on stage, right? And look at that beautiful watch. I'm sure those are diamonds around it. But isn't that pretty band? So pretty. Another earring. Elvis and Me in Cincinnati during the last concert tour, 1977, after introducing Vernon Presley, who waves the audience. Remember that scene? Introduced his daddy. And there he is introducing Kathy. Sweet man. So you can tell he's not really fat, as people would say. His arms are so little, hardly fills them out, fills his pants out. He's just bloated in his belly, and he had all that stuff going on in his intestines. Just bloated. Ginger Alden Jo Smith, Billy's wife, wife of Elvis' cousin Billy Smith, and me. Backstage. Lottie, Elvis's maid, and me having a reunion at Graceland, 1985. She cut her hair. Badge presented to me on Elvis's birthday, 1978. Bless. My gold ID card. This is to certify that Kathy Westmoreland is a member of the Elvis Presley Show, TCB. She's a vocalist, and there's Elvis's autograph. Me singing at the dedication of Elvis Aaron Presley Memorial Chapel in Tupelo, Mississippi. Courtesy of Janelle McComb. She had a lot to do with that chapel. That is a beautiful chapel. I've been in it. They really put the welcome mat out for me in Tupelo. Holiday Inn. Welcome, Kathy Westmoreland. Oh, is that her? For that dedication, I guess. Here I am performing on stage in Memphis at the Elvis International Tribute Week Memorial Concert 1985. Gosh. Visiting Graceland after my performance at the Elvis International Tribute Week Concert 1985. The Man. Photos given to me by Elvis. Looks like when he was filming Stay Away Joe. Had that heavy makeup on. Elvis and Kathy. Pretty girl. All right, so let's start chapter 6. A man there was, and they called him mad. The more he gave, the more he had. Sounds like Elvis wanting to give things away. It took years for Elvis to convince me that receiving gifts was as important to the human spirit as giving them. Perhaps it was my own background that made me value my independence to such a degree I resented anyone giving me gifts. My attitude affected my relationship with him right from the very beginning because Elvis was a giver from the time he was barely old enough to walk. Vernon told me the story of Elvis and his tricycle, which was a real luxury for the Presleys at that time. Gladys and I ate cornflakes for 2 weeks so we could save enough money to buy Elvis that trike. And from the very first day, he was always giving it away. Not that he didn't love it, but he loved seeing the joy on someone's face when he gave it to them. I spent a lot of time just going from place to place, recovering the tricycle, but that was just his way. He just loved to see the joy on people's faces when he gives them a gift. It's one of his favorite things. Elvis never changed. Without a doubt, he was the most generous person I have ever known, not only with money, but with himself. The anecdotes about Elvis gifts are legend now, but there are some that aren't generally known. For years, he provided limousines to the elderly citizens around Memphis so they could be transported to church, the doctor, or to the market. He also supported many children's benefits, cancer and heart drives, and hardly ever turned down a request from a legitimate charity. Oh my God, that is so nice. Provided limousines to the elderly so they could be transported to the church. My gosh. Once in Franklin, Tennessee, where he had gone to listen to some record takes, he and his record producer, Felton Jarvis, had to stop had to stop at a payphone to make a call. Franklin, Tennessee is right outside of Nashville. They drove up to a phone booth and Felton got out only to find he didn't have a dime in change. A man passing by was kind enough to give him some change. "Get the gentleman's name and address," Elvis told Felton from the car, "so I can send him a thank you letter." Felton did, and 3 weeks later, the man received a letter from Elvis saying thanks and also informing him that the mortgage on his home had been paid off and he now owned it free and clear. Goodness gracious. Oh my gosh, all because he gave Felton a dime. Wow. He was full of surprises, often fulfilling someone's wildest fantasies about meeting a millionaire who will make life more bearable. Then there's a story of a poor black woman in Memphis who was just looking and dreaming at the Cadillac agency showroom. Elvis spotted her and asked her if she liked the car she was looking at. "I do, but it's way over my head," she said. "If you like it, it's yours." The woman was still shaking her head in disbelief when the salesman handed her the keys. Elvis loved doing things like that. Giving unexpected gifts was his favorite thing to do. Although he was generous, he was like most people and didn't want to pay more than he thought it was worth. There is a classic story about the Lincoln Continentals. Elvis loved Cadillacs and Lincolns, and one day at Graceland he decided he wanted to buy everyone who was there at the moment. One was Myrna Smith of the Sweet Inspirations, a new Lincoln. Off they went to the Lincoln showroom, and Elvis bought 17 cars that afternoon. Of course, his friends were ecstatic with their new cars, and Elvis went up to his room. That's when he looked at the bill and said, "Wait a minute. This guy didn't give me the deal he should have." So he got everyone together the next morning, drove all 17 Lincoln Continentals back to the showroom, and handed over the keys. Without a second thought, he took them to the Cadillac dealer and bought them 17 Cadillacs instead. Wow. Don't up the price because it's Elvis Presley. They would do that when he was trying to buy horses. There'd be a horse that they were selling for $500, and they'd find out Elvis was interested in it. All of a sudden, that horse was $3,000. So not fair. People taking advantage of him. Probably if they told him, "Man, this horse is $500, but we need a little extra money to pay for our rent this month," he'd probably give him $3,000. Buy the horse and then give him $2,500. So some protested that they liked their Lincolns and hated giving them up, but their pleas fell on deaf ears because Elvis was determined he wasn't going to do business with someone who didn't live up to their word. That is right. Trust. I was part of one gift-giving adventure, and it was quite a scene. I was at Graceland when Linda Thompson's brother Sam, who was the head of security at the time, told Elvis about a young Memphis police officer with a family who had been shot in the leg while on duty, and his disability had forced him out of active duty on the police department. Elvis, who was especially fond of policemen, firemen, or anyone in uniform he thought was helping society, took an immediate interest in the story. "Bring him over to see me," Elvis told Linda's brother. The injured police officer came to Graceland, and before I knew it, Elvis, the policeman, and myself were racing around the Memphis neighborhood with Elvis driving the golf cart. Racing around the Memphis neighborhood with Elvis driving the golf cart. Elvis was dressed in his karate lounging pajamas. I was in shorts or a bathing suit. I can't remember, but I certainly wasn't dressed for visiting, and the officer was in normal civilian clothes. Elvis drove up to a house a few doors down from Vernon and knocked on the door. It must have been on Dolan Drive. The poor lady who answered must have been in shock when she saw Elvis in that karate outfit, belt and all, standing in her doorway. "Pardon me, ma'am, but is your house for sale?" "Yes, it is," she said. "How much do you want for it?" "The price is $35,000." Elvis pulled out his checkbook and wrote out a check for the correct amount and came back to the officer sitting in the golf cart. "You got yourself a house, and here is another check so you can furnish it the way you want to." He handed the shocked police officer a check, and after some more paperwork was completed, the injured policeman and his family had a brand new home, living behind Elvis Presley. And he gave them money to decorate the house the way they wanted. They could buy them some new furniture, some lamps and stuff to get on the wall, maybe update the kitchen or something. So nice. He thought of it all. Elvis never wanted to be thanked more than once. If someone gushed or reacted with too much enthusiasm, it always made him uncomfortable. He was generous because he wanted to be. In fact, his philosophy was that a man should give 10% of what he earned to God, which is the principle of tithing. The way Elvis looked at it, when he did nice things for individuals, was that he was tithing, not to a particular church, but for individuals who thought deserved his help. In his mind, helping individuals was a way of tithing because, after all, the human body is the temple of God. He felt God directed him to give at certain times to individuals. And that's what tithing is. You give money to the church for them to use to provide things that God uses that money to help people. And Elvis just skipped the church and gave straight to the people, helped the people. I mean, the things that he did would have been something someone could have gone to the church for and asked for help. But to buy a house for somebody, to give them cars, well, that's so cool about providing limo services for the elderly. Of course, Elvis sometimes went overboard, and that made his father, Vernon, very nervous. Vernon took care of the books and balanced the checking account. "You're spending too much," warned Vernon more than once. "Oh, Daddy, God has an abundance to share. If I let go, then more will come. Don't worry, God will repay 100-fold." And sure enough, a threatened bank account would once again be very solvent, and Elvis, of course, would give part of it away once again. It was just his nature, the way he liked to live. One day when we were on tour, Vernon and I went out shopping alone. We picked out a pair of white boots for Elvis, and Vernon bought himself a tie. When we got back to the hotel, Vernon showed off his new purchases. "Thank you, Daddy, for the boots," Elvis said. Then he looked at me and started cracking up. Daddy just can't adjust. He's gone from handling $25 a week to, I've averaged $3 million a year since I was 18 years old. And Daddy goes shopping and comes back with a $3 tie. Vernon shrugged his shoulders as if to say, "That's just the way I am." As I said, one characteristic of mine that annoyed Elvis most was my inability at times to accept a gift. I mentioned before that early in our relationship, Elvis wanted me to be available, and when I had to leave and go to a record session or a television show, he would try to talk me out of it by saying I didn't have to work, that he would take care of me, which is the worst thing he could say as far as I was concerned. I did not want anyone taking care of me because I felt I could take care of myself. How many girlfriends did he tell that to? He wanted them to be available for him. And he would say, "You don't need to work. I'll take care of you." I really appreciated it when he'd give me a pretty ring or something and I told him so. But I didn't want to be like so many of the others who, unfortunately, were after anything they could get, to the extent that they would sometimes deliberately set him up by saying, "Oh, Elvis, I don't know what to do. I'm losing my home." Or, "Oh, Elvis, I can't make the payments on my car." It angered me to see them willfully playing on his generosity, knowing he would give them anything they asked for. I know. On one tour, my luggage was lost, which included my stage footwear, and I needed boots to go with the outfit I was wearing in the show. Elvis wanted to buy them for me, and I refused. Instead of protesting and then forgetting it, Elvis persisted, and I kept refusing. Later, I realized I had hurt his feelings, but at that time, I felt that everyone was always taking things from Elvis, and I wasn't going to be like the rest of them. I also felt that I wasn't getting paid well enough to buy my own boots, even if they were only to be... Oh, wait, let me go back. I felt that everyone was always taking things from Elvis, and I wasn't going to be like the rest of them. I also felt that I was getting paid well enough to buy my own boots, even if they were only to be worn in the show. It was a matter of two strong wills confronting one another. Anyway, I bought my own boots and was pleased with myself. I guess my inability to accept gifts became a challenge to Elvis. He spent a great deal of time discussing it with me. He would read me passages from the prophet, allowing the giver to give gifts, or he would find some biblical quote, a line of poetry, in his attempts to change my attitude. Elvis would cite different examples of givers, the spiritual meaning of it, and the person's need to give. Don't deny the giver the gift, he would say, and then expound on the life processes of just giving and receiving. He might read, "And you are all receivers, assume no weight of gratitude, lest you lay a yoke upon yourself and upon him who gives," from the prophet, and then hand the book to me and insist I read the same passage aloud to him. I guess he wanted to make certain I was paying attention. See, being a giver is a gift from God. I mean, that is a trait that God gives some people, and he definitely was. And he knew by this stage of his life, he knew he was a giver. It just gave him so much joy. And God had blessed him with money, which allowed him to give things and take care of things for people. In fact, Elvis was really a teacher. He had such an analytical mind and would explain things in detail, and he could recall multitudes of lines of poetry or biblical quotations to verify his position on any subject he was teaching at the time. He had a natural ability to instruct and help educate someone whose mind might be closed on a subject dearest to his heart. A student, as well as a teacher, he was fond of quoting, "When the pupil is ready, the master appears." Like when your ears are open and you're ready to hear something, the master appears. Elvis was I've heard him say that before in other books. Elvis was equally kind about giving his time. I remember one recording session he stopped in order to fly to Denver and sing at a funeral for a policeman who had been killed. When someone asked him to do it, he didn't hesitate. He just got in his plane and flew to Denver because he thought it was the right thing to do. Despite the cost of the recording session, he went ahead and left and came back. I recall a wonderful singer, Jeannie Green, who worked with Elvis on many of his albums. At a recording session, he came and sat by us girls on the floor, and he was wearing a very expensive and truly gorgeous purple suede cape. Jeannie told him how much she liked it. That was enough for Elvis. He took off the cape and draped it around her shoulders. Elvis also paid top salaries to those of us who worked on his show. I've heard that some of the musicians made 3 times the going rate. My own salary was very good, but on top of this, Elvis gave us a bonus. Not on every tour, but when he wanted to do something, he would call us in individually, and then he might say, I have a surprise for you. Look under the bed, or look under the pillow. There will be a check for $1,000 or $2,000, and he only expected a polite thank you, nothing more. We learned that the less said about the bonus, the better. You can just picture him going in their rooms and putting a check under their pillow or a check under their bed, and going back out and then getting everybody together, and then leaving the room, getting everybody together and telling them, look under your bed or look under your pillow. But he was nobody's fool. One singing group that he had worked with and liked were negotiating for a new contract. They were asking for the moon, all sorts of perks, plus a huge amount of money. Elvis knew it was too much and said so. The group never worked with him again. Wonder who that was. One time he flew to Las Vegas. An independent artist and repertoire man known as A&R. An independent artist and repertoire man known as A&R in the business, who had worked on his sessions, along with his family and associates, gave each of the wives a check to go on a shopping spree, and had a wonderful time hearing about all the things they bought. Hey, come over here. Tell me what you got. I remember when turquoise was really fashionable. I had turquoise rings on all my fingers, except my thumbs, of course, and Elvis told me to hold out my hands. Get that stuff off your fingers, he said laughingly. I was a little hesitant first because the turquoise on my hands was not cheap. It was all pretty expensive and was the fad at the time. Even Elvis had been wearing a lot of turquoise. I guess I was a little slow for him because he started to take all my rings off and threw them on the floor. Then he placed a diamond and ruby platinum ring on my finger. It was absolutely beautiful. Now, that's what you should be wearing instead of all that cheap stuff, he said, laughing. By this time, I had learned to accept a gift, but I also crawled down on the floor and recovered my turquoise rings because I had paid a lot of money for them. He really got a kick out of that. Watching her crawl around on the floor. This is beautiful, Elvis. Thank you so much. But I still want my turquoise that you threw on the floor. Well, then get down there and get it. One of the biggest problems was that Elvis never carried money with him, not even a dime. One time, he and his bodyguard, Jerry Schilling, made a hurried trip to Washington, D.C. to see President Nixon. Before they left, Jerry obtained $300, thinking that would be enough cash for a hurried trip. Well, I heard it was $5, but oh well. On the plane, Elvis began talking to a serviceman who had just returned from Vietnam. After a short conversation with the serviceman, Elvis turned to Jerry and said, "Give him all the money we have." "But Elvis," Jerry protested in a whisper. "Oh, but Elvis, tomorrow is Sunday and all the banks will be closed, and we only have $300. Why don't I give him $200? "Give him all of it," Elvis said in a firm voice. "Why not part of it?" "I said to give him all of it, and I mean it." Reluctantly, Jerry handed over the entire $300 and then spent a hectic time in Washington trying to find someone to cash a check for the world's most famous singer who's meeting with the President of the United States. Not all of the recipients of Elvis, isn't that funny? He's like, I don't need to be bothered with money. Someone else can find some for me. Not all of the recipients of Elvis's gifts were grateful. Can you imagine? One couple who had received a new Pontiac seemed happy, but one night while we were having dinner in the dining room at Graceland, they came over without an invitation. The wife couldn't wait to complain, but remained quiet until there was a lull in the conversation. "Elvis, you know the car you gave us? Well, I had to spend $500 to get the air conditioning fixed. Isn't that something?" There was silence around the table. Vernon's face turned red, and Elvis remained tight-lipped and silent. When Elvis was truly angry, he did not bellow. He was silent, holding his anger in. Without a word, Elvis left the table, went upstairs, and brought back a check for $1,600. "Here," he said to the wife. That should pay for the inconvenience and maybe some left over for a new wardrobe. Here, that should pay for the inconvenience and maybe some left over for a new wardrobe. The woman took the check with a smile and stuffed it in her purse. Soon after that, they left, and Vernon blew his top. The nerve, the absolute nerve of that woman, he bellowed. Now, Daddy, she can't help what she is, soothed Elvis, and the entire matter was forgotten, or at least was never discussed again, to my knowledge. Wow. He remained tight-lipped, held it in, went upstairs, wrote a check to pay for her money that she spent on the air conditioning, and then said she had some left over for a new wardrobe. Wow. Now, Daddy, she can't help what she is. He also had a sense of humor about his gifts. One skiing trip to Aspen, Colorado, he bought 21 Cadillacs for everyone in his skiing party, which included girlfriends of the guys in the entourage. The story hit the wire services, and Elvis was listening to the radio when he heard a local disc jockey talking about the 21 Cadillacs. Then the disc jockey said, "Hey, Elvis, if you're listening out there, I'd like a new Cadillac too." Elvis laughed and sent the guy one. I'll bet he was flabbergasted when he found out his little humorous punchline to a news story netted him a brand new luxury car. Wow. Everyone knows how much Elvis loved beautiful jewelry. They might not know, however, that he designed many of the rings and necklaces himself, or sketched out ideas as a pattern for a jewelry maker. Yeah, that's really cool. Like, he designed the TCB necklaces, but he designed some of the other things too. That's really cool. Which means his little mind is sitting around thinking about that kind of stuff, you know? It's like, how am I gonna, I want a ring, and I want, let's see, what kind of ring do I want next? You know? One night backstage, while waiting to go on during my first week with Elvis, so that was in August of 70, he came up early, made a special trip over to my side of the stage, and took my hand. He sweetly said, "Pretty hands." Then, taking delight in surprising me, he slipped a beautiful, massive 18-karat gold cat's head ring with sapphire eyes onto my middle finger. Wow. A cat head with sapphire eyes. "I designed this myself," he said, "and I thought it looked like you." Cool. I thought it looked like you. Actually, it did look like me. It was really neat. I still own this ring and wear it daily. Oh, I'm glad she still has it. Glad she didn't give it away. Aw, because he designed it. That was his creativity. It is an Egyptian-looking cat, and with the cat's ears standing up, it could even be considered a deadly weapon. Of course, it will always be a precious memory as well as a wonderful gift. Wow. Wonder what she's doing with that. I wonder if she's like giving it to her daughter or granddaughter or something like that. To have that in the family, oh my gosh. Say, Elvis designed this. He once designed a jeweled collar for his Great Dane Brutus and liked it so much that he had one made for himself. Cool. I know he does wear a jeweled necklace with one of his jumpsuits, one that comes down really low on his chest, and he wears this like choker collar up there. I wonder if that's the one he's talking about. In fact, he was such a jewelry aficionado, he had his own jeweler on tours with us. Lowell Hayes, who owned a jewelry store in Memphis, joined a leg of most tours. He came complete with a jewelry case so Elvis could look over the merchandise and select gifts for his friends or someone he just wanted to give jewelry to. That doesn't mean Elvis spent a lot of time looking at jewelry, but he wanted Lowell around in case the mood struck him, and he wanted to give jewelry to anyone. One tour, Lowell joined us, and he must have left Memphis in a hurry because he forgot his jewelry case. So when Elvis wanted to see what Lowell had brought with him, he had to confess that he had nothing to show. This must have irritated Elvis. So he insisted Lowell accompany him and his entourage to a jewelry store in whatever town we happened to be in. I don't remember where we were. And poor Lowell had to stand there while Elvis bought thousands of dollars worth of gifts and see all the money he lost that night. Elvis is like, I bring you on these tours to give out jewelry in case I get the bug to give out jewelry. And you left the jewelry at home? All right, I'm still going to give out the jewelry. So I want you to watch all the stuff I buy that you missed out on. Oh my gosh. When the shopping spree was over, Elvis turned to Lowell and said, "Did you learn your lesson, son?" Poor Lowell. I don't think he ever forgot his case again. Did you learn your lesson, son? Elvis told me once about one of his relatives. They wanted a motorhome more than anything else in the world, so Elvis spent hours going through brochures of motorhomes, studying the pros and cons of each model before he bought them what he thought was the very best one in the market. They seemed delighted, but 2 weeks later, they sold it and pocketed the money. When he told me the story, he leaned back, squinted his eyes slightly, and using his hand for emphasis, referred to the Bible scripture, "Kathy, you got to deem yourself a giver. You have to be selective about who you give things to." So if you're going to be a giver, you got to be selective on who you give gifts to. So he's like, I learned my lesson. Wow. Can you believe those people did that? Those relatives. He did have some relatives that were, they had their hands out all the time. They only showed up at his house when they needed something. Elvis gave gifts with a free and loving spirit. Not wanting thanks, he simply wanted the receiver to enjoy the gift. Sometimes he would go hide so that the recipient wouldn't embarrass him with thanks. Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. Oh my gosh, this is so great. And he's like starting to get embarrassed. Bless. He expected those close to him to be generous too. For instance, John Wilkinson, our guitar player, had his car stolen. Elvis turned to his closest friend, Charlie Hodge, and said, "Charlie, sell your car to John for $1. I'll buy you another one." I don't know how many cars Charlie had to give away because Elvis wanted someone else to have one that very instant. He always bought Charlie another one, but Charlie learned to never get too attached to any of his automobiles because it might be gone within a few minutes. Yeah, like what if you gave him one that he loved? And then Elvis, sell your car to him for $1 and I'll buy you another one. Elvis could never pass an accident on the road without stopping to see if he could help, and he usually found some way to assist. Yes, I have heard many examples of him doing that. Can you imagine? You're in an accident and you're out there and a car pulls up and Elvis walks out of it. Oh my gosh. He also stopped to break up fights. In fact, not too long before his death, he was doing a show in Indianapolis, and on the way to the theater, he stopped and broke up a fight in a service station. Many people pass accidents and fights or stand around and watch the mayhem, but not Elvis. He wanted to help, do something about it, and he always did. Elvis was fascinated with anything medical having to do with doctors or medicine, including plastic surgery. He had his own eyes done once, which was no big deal for an entertainer hitting middle age, but that wasn't enough for him. If someone was unhappy with their nose or their drooping eyes, Elvis would become very enthusiastic and encourage them to have plastic surgery, always adding that he would pay the expenses. Yeah, he paid plastic surgery for a couple of his friends. I know Larry, he did something for Larry, and he did something for George. He said, I want you to do it first and see how it looks on you, and then I'll do it after that. Oh, they were guinea pigs. Excuse me. One of the male singers in the show was worried about his baldness. Elvis paid for hair transplant treatments and was fascinated as he watched and supervised the progress of the procedure. Advising the doctor during the operations. Oh my gosh, advising the doctor. Elvis continued touting self-improvement treatments of one kind of another. Oh my gosh. So this is the kind of things he would do for entertainment, I guess. Like, hey, Elvis, what'd you do this week? Well, on Tuesday, I went to a hair transplant procedure for one of the guys in my band and helped the doctor decide, what to do. Helped him, advised him. Sorry, I need to take a sip of my iced coffee. See my horse? Love that. All right, so here we go. Elvis paid for a much-needed kidney transplant for his record producer, Felton Jarvis. Yeah, I heard that. He had bad kidneys. And Elvis paid for a kidney transplant. Felton told me in 1970 that the surgery was expected to add approximately 5 years to his life. In fact, he enjoyed active and productive years up until January 1981, much longer than the doctors expected. So that was in 1970. Wow. So that's when he was having all that comeback time. 69. Felton helped him record all that music. So he lived 11 more years. Well, he enjoyed active and productive years. So after that, I guess he went downhill. But 6 years longer. Lamar Fike, a sometimes lighting man for the show and court jester, weighed in at 400 pounds and was not in good health. Elvis paid for Lamar's intestinal bypass surgery? Never knew he did that. Who afterward dropped a great deal of his weight and was in better health than ever before. Of course, any hard luck story would always touch Elvis's heart. I know of 2 handicapped people who had surgery that Elvis paid for, and I'm sure there were many more none of us ever heard about. He read medical books and idolized doctors. In fact, he had medical doctors in Vegas and one on tour with us, Dr. George Nicopolis. Elvis liked nothing better than to discuss with Dr. Nick, as we all called him, the medical details of the human body and cures for ailments that might have just come on the market. He believed everything doctors told him, and I know that if he had not been a singer, Elvis would have gone to medical school one way or another. He was generous to us with Dr. Nick's services as well. When he had vitamin shots, we all got vitamin shots. If one of us was sick with the flu or headache, Elvis would be so concerned he would send Dr. Nick to our room to prescribe some kind of medicine or just look us over. This even damaged Elvis's reputation later on when much medication prescribed in his name was in actuality dispensed to others on the tour. He just bought it for them. See, and I have said that over and over and over and over again, that all that medication that was prescribed for him, that people said after he died, it was prescribed in his name Dr. Nick had to prescribe it in someone's name. So he put it in Elvis's name and basically carried a pharmacy around with them so that he could treat anything that came up during a tour for anyone, the singers, the musicians, the lighting people, the people that set up the stage, the people that drove, anybody that had any needed medication of any kind. All he had to do was open up his bag and pull it out and give it to him. So that's where all that medicine came from. Elvis didn't use it all. And here she said that if Elvis got a vitamin shot, they all got vitamin shots. Oh my gosh. But Elvis idolized doctors because he had always said that if they had been able to afford a doctor when he was born, he thinks his brother would have lived. And probably a lot of times, he would get sick when he was little. They couldn't go to the doctor. They couldn't pay for it and get medicine. So when he was able to afford for doctors and for medications, he was all about that. I mean, I think, he had acne, as so many of us have in our middle to late teenage years. And he started going to a dermatologist when he could afford it. And I think that the dermatologist told him to use the Neutrogena soap because it was good for the skin. And Linda talks about how he used Neutrogena soap when she dated him in the mid-70s. And he probably started using this stuff when he was, still going on tour when he was, because they said when he started touring that he had acne, a lot of people, and you could see it in some of the pictures. And so that's probably when he started making money. He went to a dermatologist when he was 20 years old, 21. And so now he's in his 40s, still using Neutrogena. So, and he thought, the doctors could help his mama, but he would do whatever they said. So, and that's what Kathy says right here. He believed everything doctors told him. And back then in the 70s, people did. It wasn't like today in the 2020s when sometimes you're not sure if you can trust a doctor. That some of them might be getting paid for stuff that they prescribe, and so getting kickbacks, and sometimes you're just not sure whether to trust the doctors or not, which is terrible. But I think back in the day that you could. It wasn't like the government was all in on medication, and the insurance companies weren't all in on it. And so I think you could trust your doctors much more back in the 80s. But they didn't know as much or in the 70s and the 60s. They didn't know as much as they know now. There's been a lot more studies done on a lot of things. So anyway, back to the story. I don't know how I got down that. But yeah, he trusted the doctors. So all the medication was prescribed in Elvis's name so that Dr. Nick could dispense it to all the others on the tour. Elvis probably gave more gifts to his bodyguards than anyone else close to him. He bought them cars, sometimes twice a year, bought them homes so their families would be comfortable. But that was only the beginning of his giving. My observation was that they had pretty easy jobs and made a lot of money, if you include the gifts, for doing very little. In fact, when they did have to work, they did it with a lot of grumbling. And they were jealous of anyone close to Elvis, and they were jealous of one another, always resenting anyone besides themselves who received a gift or special attention from their employer. Yeah. A lot of grumbling. Ginger talks about it. Like when Elvis would come to her house when they were dating to visit with her family, and the bodyguards would come. And of course, it would be like 3 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m., maybe 11 o'clock at night. I don't know. But whenever they would go, it was always at night. And she said she could tell one of the bodyguards seemed very bored with his job as she talked. Maybe she was just, I think she talked to him about it a little bit. But, he said he'd rather be home sleeping or something. And here he had to get up and go with Elvis everywhere he wanted. So, that's your job, man. If you don't want it, there's other people that would like to do it. But here she says they were jealous of anyone close to Elvis, and they were jealous of one another, always resenting anyone besides themselves who received a gift or special attention from their employer. And when they had to work, they did it with a lot of grumbling behind Elvis's back. When he owned a ranch in Mississippi just across the river from Memphis, the bodyguards would play at the ranch until it was time to go home, and they would reluctantly leave. And the ranch was fun for them. Elvis used to love to tell me about those days when they rode all day, played games, and he bought pickup trucks for everyone of the entourage, which, of course, included the bodyguards. When they told him how much they hated to leave the place every night, Elvis ordered mobile homes and had them erected on the ranch. It was like a commune, he explained to me, and they all had fun drag racing the trucks and racing the horses. Describing the ranch to me one day, Elvis told me he ordered 20 mobile homes set up overnight, and he told the man he bought them from, "If you can't do it today, forget it." Then Elvis laughed and said he actually settled for fewer homes and a few more days. If you can't set them all up in one day, forget it. But then he ended up buying less homes and gave them a couple more days to set it all up. They had to hook up electric and plumbing and all that. In Palm Springs, he bought dune buggies for them, and at one period, each of them had a Harley Davidson motorcycle and would burn up the Memphis streets trying to outdo one another. Granted, when they were on tour with Elvis, they had to work hard like the rest of us. There were hundreds of little details to handle when you are moving 100 people from city to city almost every day, and many of those tasks fell on their shoulders. They were responsible for Elvis's safety, and he did need all the protection he could get from overzealous fans and some crackpots who wanted to harm him just to get some notoriety. However, between trips, it was all fun and games. They had little or nothing to do, but still collected their weekly paychecks and received gifts. They spent most of their time gossiping about Elvis and what he was doing behind his back. Sometimes the bodyguards needed a bodyguard or at least a keeper. I am thinking of one incident that happened at Graceland. I was visiting there, and I had been outside and was just coming back into the house. As I entered the den, all the guys had been given brand new wristwatches. Elvis had just purchased them through one member of his Memphis Mafia. I commented on the beautiful watch Elvis had on his wrist. It was a platinum Patek Philippe with a blue lapis face. I just went, "Wow, that's pretty." He was sitting on the couch next to Linda. He looked up and said, "You like that?" Without another word, he zapped it right off and handed it to me. Red said, "No, I want that one. Here, I'll trade you." I looked at him and said, "No, thank you. I like this one." Red and Elvis laughed and said, "Yeah, she knows the difference. Hers is a $5,000 watch and Red's is about $3,000. It was all lighthearted, and Red kept saying, "Come on, Kath, come on, let's trade." The honest truth is, I really had no idea about the worth of either watch. It's just that I thought it was so pretty, and Elvis had just given it to me right off his wrist. But strangely enough, a few weeks later, I got a long-distance phone call from one of the guys saying, "Get rid of your watch. Don't ask questions, just get rid of it." Well, that was just the beginning of the wristwatch caper. A Nashville newspaper wrote an article about all the jewelry Elvis had given J.D. Sumner with accompanying photos. Just one ring was worth $60,000, and there were many different pieces in that collection. That's a lot of money for a ring back then. The next thing we knew, an FBI agent came knocking on the door of JD's home. I was there visiting, sleeping in the guest room. Mary, JD's wife, was a nervous wreck. Mary came into the guest room, wakes me up, and whispers, "The FBI's at the door. They want to check jewelry." She was real upset that the paper had published a huge 1/2 page color photo of the jewelry Elvis had given to JD because she was afraid someone might try to break into their home and steal it. But my heart stopped because I suddenly remembered I had been told to get rid of the watch that at that very moment was on my wrist. The FBI agent was checking to see if any of JD's jewelry was among some recently stolen stuff. JD handled the whole thing coolly and calmly. No one broke into my room at gunpoint, thank God. I don't know what JD told the feds, but they finally left. However, they showed up at Graceland and hassled Elvis, and he really flipped. And when he found out they had been to see JD's family, he really got hot. "Hey man, what the hell's going on here? I don't need this shit. I don't have to buy any hot property." Oh. He's saying that the jewelry that JD bought, or JD had, that Elvis had given JD hot stolen jewelry. "Hey man, what the hell's going on around here? I don't need this shit. I don't have to buy any hot property," he screamed at his guys. He was really upset that they had put him in that embarrassing position with the law. He always appreciated the deal. He got his cars at a fleet price, but he believed in capitalism and believed in paying a fair price for what he bought. He didn't want to drive the hardest bargain possible, and he certainly didn't want to deal in stolen goods in order to get a bargain. Elvis had to really go to bat and do a lot of explaining to keep the FBI heat off those boys. Red West was a top bodyguard. He had protected Elvis from a bully way back in high school in Memphis, and they had been friends ever since. Red knew a little about music too, so that gave them some common ground. There was Red's cousin, Sonny West, and about 9 others who spent their time keeping Elvis protected from people who might do him harm. When I had been on tour for a couple of years with the show, things were getting boring, even with the death threats and constant danger. So Elvis cooked up a little plot for his own amusement. JD's gospel group had recently joined the show, and they were all up in Elvis's penthouse suite in Las Vegas. Elvis enlisted the help of Sonny and Red West in his secret plot. First, they snuck around and filled everyone's guns with blanks. When everyone was in the penthouse suite, they started discussing a serious death threat, which was not all that unusual because there seemed to be a new one every day. Oh my gosh. Elvis and his practical jokes. This one hits kind of close to home, though. A little scary. Suddenly, a man, which was Sonny, burst through the door with a gun and shouted, "I'm going to kill that son of a bitch," and started shooting blanks. It all happened so fast, everybody froze and then scattered or fell on the floor. Some ducked behind furniture. Others laid flat on the floor, shaking. Only Big J.D. Sumner had the presence of mind to protect Elvis. He fell over Elvis' prone body to protect him. And that's when Elvis started laughing, and they all knew they had been the victims of one of his practical jokes. J.D. was ready to take a bullet. He's a good man. Soon, everybody was laughing about it. But most of all, I was amused that all those brave bodyguards protected themselves first and forgot about their reason for being with the show in the first place. It was a singer who protected the star from getting killed. The most impressed was Elvis. After that, he gave J.D. rings and other jewelry more frequently than anyone else, and liked it when JD showed off his rings, even while we were on stage. I know for a fact that Elvis was not as amused as he pretended to be about the bodyguard's failure to protect him. I think he saw them in a different light, but he would never have let those new feelings show. On the surface, everything seemed the same, but I could detect a difference, and I always wondered if the bodyguards detected that feeling too. Several years later, Red, Sonny, and Dave Hebler. Dave only worked for Elvis for a brief time. We're told they had been fired by Vernon Presley. Vernon was upset because the bodyguards were supposedly hassling some of the audiences unnecessarily, and this resulted in too many lawsuits. They also began to tell Elvis how to live his life. They resented openly any gifts he might give to someone outside the group. They told him after he had given the black lady in the auto showroom a car that he shouldn't be giving cars to strangers. I do believe that Red West was genuinely concerned about Elvis's health at the time, but unfortunately, he had no understanding then of why Elvis was moody and over-medicating himself. That's right. In retaliation for being fired, the three, Red, Sonny, and Dave, wrote a devastating book, Elvis, What Happened, which accused Elvis of being a drug addict and told many stories that were only half-truths. Elvis was very hurt by the book and couldn't believe they would do that to him. How could they, after all I have done for them, after all the good times we had, after everything that has gone on between us, how could they do that to me? It preyed on his mind until the very end, and it was too late to apologize because they were too late. Elvis died about 2 weeks after the book was released. So it must have been released like August 1st. I knew he died shortly after it was released, so it came out. And he was very concerned about it and what the fans would think of him and what they would say. However, they know and I know that had Elvis lived, he would have forgiven them. He would have taken them back into the fold and erased the ugly incident out of his mind. Elvis never carried a grudge for long, and most times when he fired someone, he ended up taking them back a short time later. My feelings were, if they were so unhappy, so miserable working for Elvis, why did they stay on for so many years? Why didn't they just leave? Of course, the answer is that they could never have found such a well-paying, cushy job anywhere else, and certainly not a job that included so many perks like beautiful vacations, staying in first-class hotels, being sought after by girls and fans, being showered with cars, trucks, houses, and jewelry. The truth of the matter is that they enjoyed every minute of their time with Elvis. They lived a life that others in the same circumstances only dream about. The stories about Elvis's generosity are endless because his generous acts were endless. There was a black woman he read about in a Memphis newspaper who was handicapped and confined to her home. Elvis bought her the most expensive wheelchair he could find and had it delivered to her. I think one of his guys read about it in the paper and came and showed it to him. And he's like, we need to do something for her. Let's do this. I remember one day at Graceland, I went down to the kitchen to the little breakfast bar. Right off the den, there was a little bulletin board on the wall. I looked at it and there was a note that said, Elvis, call Jackie Wilson's wife. Jackie was a black singer with many hits during the 50s and 60s. When Elvis came downstairs, he got in touch with her and found out Jackie had just had a heart attack. He was in the hospital, and she had called to tell him. I'm real sorry to hear this. If I can help in any way, let me know. As soon as he hung up the phone, he instructed one of the guys to send her a check for $30,000 and said, she's going to have a lot of hospital bills to take care of. See if that'll help out some. I have seen him give total strangers expensive jewelry. One night during a show in Las Vegas, one man yelled out that he wanted Elvis's ring and not a scarf. I don't want a scarf. I want that ring you're wearing. Elvis gave him one of his own rings, which really upset all of us. I guess it was because he was humoring a greedy man. Yeah, in his mind, he just handled it differently. He interpreted it differently, and why not? Elvis began featuring me as a soloist after he saw me on TV doing a telethon in Las Vegas. I was singing backup and duets with him, but had never done a solo. Anyway, Elvis watched telethons. Oh my gosh, I remember those telethons that came on TV back in the day. And so he watched it too because they would have entertainers come on the show, you know? And Marlo Thomas's father used to come out and he would play the piano and sing. And sometimes they'd have Jerry Lee. He'd come out and play on the piano. So they had entertainers come out. They were kind of fun to watch. And when you only had 3 channels on the TV, you just put that on and it'd be up playing all night or all afternoon. And you walk in the room and watch it a little bit and walk out of the room, walk back in the room. So I can see how Elvis did that. So it's good to know. Anyway, Elvis watched telethons. And when we were on, he donated extra money to the charity involved. That's so funny. So you're going to be on the telethon? All right, I'm going to watch. I'm going to watch you. However, occasionally there was a catch. On a telethon on which the stamps were appearing, Elvis called and said, I'll donate. Oh, a catch. Elvis's catch. I'll donate $10,000 if the stamps will jump in the swimming pool with their suits on. They jumped. Elvis paid, and everybody had a good laugh. I would love to have been watching one of those when that happened. The stamps are on, and you get a call. It's Elvis on the line. And they forward the call or the message to the announcer, and the announcer tells the stamps, Elvis Presley called and said he'll donate $10,000 if you guys will jump into the swimming pool with your suits on. So they all march out, and they jump in. I would have loved to have been watching it and saw that. That would have been so funny. Oh, my gosh. Usually, Elvis loved to share an experience, but sometimes he balked at being taken for granted. I think the best illustration of this is the Lisa Marie, his personal plane. For months, Elvis had supervised and worried about every detail, and at last, it was ready for its maiden flight. I think he bought it and had it working. I think Linda went out with him some to look at it. I think he got it in 1976. I know he had it for over a year before he died. The bodyguards and others staying in Memphis at the time were ecstatic. They planned a big day, and the guys brought their wives and girlfriends, all ready for a party and celebration. When they congregated at Graceland, Elvis was in one of his arbitrary moods and looked at the gathering as if he didn't know why they were there. The Lisa Marie is ready, explained one of the guys, and we're going to help you break her in. Elvis just looked at them and said, I didn't plan any party, and I don't remember ever inviting any of you. With that, he went to his room where he stayed all day. Of course, the group was disappointed and puzzled. Later, Elvis told me about the incident, and then there was a sardonic grin on his face. Look, they are always taking things for granted. I thought I would teach them a lesson. To tell you the truth, not going out to see my plane just about killed me. Then he laughed at his own stubborn determination. Elvis was smart and knew when he was being taken for granted, and sometimes he just kind of let it fly. Oh, bless him. He's such a good person. He was so above them, and the way he handled things, God just really helped him get through all that. He probably was like, oh my gosh, he was up there wanting to go in that plane. He's like, I've got to teach them a lesson. Lord, help me deal with it. No. Then he laughed at his own stubborn determination. The first time I saw the Lisa Marie was an event I will always remember. We were playing Las Vegas, and it was the first time he had used it on tour. You haven't seen the plane yet. It's here. Come go with me after the show. He was excited as a young boy. After the last show, about 2:30 in the morning, we got to the hangar area at the Vegas airport. He took me right on board, showed me around, and gave me the grand tour. I was really thrilled and excited for him because he was so proud. The Lisa Marie was truly gorgeous. I remember I was at the side of a long, oval-shaped, inlaid wood table with green felt around the edges. He was seated at the head of the table in a big, comfortable-looking chair he had designed especially for himself. On the wall behind him, above his right shoulder, was the image of the American flag. As we sat there, he noticed I was looking at the flag. He was curious as to what I thought of everything. I remember him saying, as he saw me looking at the flag, "Nowhere but in this country could I do what I've done. Okay, Kathy, where do you want to go?" So he designed the chair at the head of the table, especially for himself. Next time I go, I need to really pay attention to that. The head chair. He designed it for him. "Hawaii," I blurted out just off the top of my head. I didn't think he'd take me seriously, but he did, and I should have known better. "Rev up the engines," Elvis was suddenly yelling to the pilots. "Okay," he pointed to Joe Esposito. "Kathy wants to go to Hawaii, so let's go." Joe was exasperated. "You can't make it back in time. You've got a show to do here tomorrow night." Elvis just shook his head. "Yeah, we can. Yeah, we can." Then Joe started pleading. "Elvis, you guys will be up all night and you'll be exhausted." "We can sleep on the damn plane," Elvis replied calmly. Then all the other guys, Joe, Charlie, and everyone else, started pleading with me while I was momentarily isolated in the galley area. "Tell him you don't really want to go. We'll never make it back in time." So I did. I walked back over to Elvis and said, "I don't think we should really try to make this flight. Our voices will be shot." I pointed out that it was about 7 hours each way and that we'd have to turn around and come right back home as soon as we got there, and we'd still be late for the show. And see, remember how she said at some point how they would talk about you had to have like 7 or 8 hours of sleep to rest the voice before you could use it the next day? "Oh, I guess you're right, honey," he acquiesced. "Cut it, guys. Cool the engines." Everyone breathed a sigh of relief. There were many other times the guys needed someone like me to step in to try and convince Elvis to be more sensible about details and not behave quite so impulsively. Well, like I think he told June, he told somebody, I read it in a book, that he just didn't have much time. And, like, not meaning that he was going to live a short life, but he just didn't have much time in between everything he had to do. And so when he decided to do something, he didn't want to wait. So he just did it then. And so, if he wanted to go to the movies, he'd go to the movies then. If he wanted to go ride a motorcycle, he'd ride a motorcycle right then and there. He couldn't wait. Like, let's go horseback riding. We got to do it now. He said, "I just don't have much time." So on his time off, he did things because before he knew it, he'd be out having to make some commitment to something, or, go rehearse, or go record, or go get clothes, or go look at a house for someone. He just didn't have much time to do things. So he was very impulsive. But that was also, I think, a part of his personality. But in all my memories about Elvis and my discomfort in accepting most gifts, I think often of Baltimore just weeks before he died. He had called me and asked me to stay with him. Larry Geller, Elvis' spiritual confidant and friend, was there, and we talked about many things, all very spiritual and deep. Elvis was very ill, and we all knew it, but he didn't discuss his health. Because back then, they just didn't talk about health, or at least his family. Some of his cousins have talked, and I think it was just how they did things back then. Like his mom never talked. They never knew how sick she was. They just kind of kept that stuff to themselves. Elvis was very ill, and we all knew it, but we didn't discuss his health. I was in bed, and Elvis was sitting on the bed with his back turned to me and his feet on the floor. So like he must have been at the foot of the bed. Larry Geller was sitting on the floor. So you can just picture that. She's sitting in the bed. He's at the foot of the bed with his back to her, and Larry Geller's on the floor. "What's your favorite color, Kathy?" Elvis asked me. "Blue," I answered without hesitation. "What kind of car are you driving?" Elvis probed. "I have an old 1958 Mercedes, but I don't drive it very often, and I usually drive my '69 Cadillac," I replied. "What's the prettiest car you have ever seen?" Elvis pursued the subject of cars. "I don't know what the name of it is, but I saw it in a car show once," and Elvis didn't wait for me to finish and interrupted. "If you were going to get a car," so here she is, "but I saw it in a car show once, and if you were going to get a car, what kind would you get? Maserati, Ferrari, Rolls-Royce? What would you like? How about a Corvette? Maybe a 450 SL Mercedes?" "No," I said, "I like a big car." "You little bitty thing in a great big old car?" Elvis was laughing. "The bigger the car, the better," I said. "I just don't feel safe in small automobiles." By this time, I knew Elvis was going to buy me a car, and my mind was going a mile a minute. I wasn't going to be foolish and say I wanted a Rolls Royce. He had given his Rolls to Lamar Fike, and the first repair bill was $1,900. Lamar had to sell the Rolls to pay the bill. He also bought another car for a boy who worked for him just a short time, which was a Corvette, and the boy had a great deal of trouble paying the insurance for that kind of car. I just didn't need that kind of trouble. So I said, "One car I have always wanted is a black Lincoln Town Car." He laughed and said, "Okay, you got it." Then Elvis said he wanted me to go back to Memphis with him to get me the new Lincoln. It had been years since he had offered me a car, but this time he looked at me for the longest time and said, "You'd better learn to take a gift. Don't say no to me again." I guess she had said no to the car before. "So don't say no to me again." For once, I had the grace of accepting without argument. Larry Geller looked over at me and laughed. "What are you laughing about, Geller? You get one. What are you laughing about, Geller? You get one too," he said. Then Elvis turned and looked at me. "You sure you want black? That's an evil color." Elvis had black cars. "That's an evil color." Because of my work schedule, I had no way of getting the car back to Los Angeles. Elvis brought my parents to Memphis to drive the car back home. Then, when I did arrive in Memphis, Elvis had taken great care to do the presentation with a bit of drama. Oh, okay. So because of my work schedule, I had no way of getting the car back to Los Angeles. So Elvis brought my parents to Memphis to drive the car back home. Then, when I did arrive in Memphis, Elvis had taken great care to do the presentation with a bit of drama, as he liked to do. And that is one thing in Lucy DeBarban's book she talks about, like, how in the world would she know that? Whenever he presented her with something, she said he did it elaborately with great drama. Another thing she knows about him, that how would she know unless she actually knew him? When I got to Graceland at about midnight, I met him upstairs in Lisa's room. He was watching TV. He was dressed in a red and green velour full-length robe and had a turquoise inlaid gun next to his cheeseburger. I think I've seen that gun. I think it's in the museum. It's very pretty, very pretty. He had it laying next to his cheeseburger, wearing a red and green velour full-length robe. Gosh, I don't really want to say that. I got a fucking graveyard out back for my TVs, he laughed, obviously referring to the story that he shot out TVs if he didn't like a program. Then he called Charlie on the phone and asked, "Is everything ready?" He quickly put down the phone and stood up. "Follow me a minute, baby." So he calls Charlie and says, "Everything ready?" And put the phone down and said, "Follow me a minute, baby." He turned on his gigantic police flashlight. It's like a foot and a half long. And led me downstairs and out the front door of the mansion. So they probably went down those front steps. And it's all red. Remember, all red carpet going up the steps, red carpet everywhere, red furniture in the dining room to the left because they're walking out the door. I mean, the dining room to the right has those big, tall chairs with red. And then to the left is all that red furniture in the living room. Red, red, red. So they go out the front door of the mansion. And there, in the driveway, was my brand new white Lincoln Continental Mark V. He waved the flashlight beam back and forth, dramatically spotlighting the new car, which was already well lit by several lights the groundskeeper and Charlie had prearranged. So the lights are already out there, but outside, but he's shining the flashlight all over it. Elvis, he's so dramatic. Oh my gosh. What did he have in 1956? He had a Lincoln Continental Mark II. And now we're up to Mark V's. Yes, the Lincoln was white because Elvis obviously didn't think I should have a black one. Then he looked at me and winked. There wasn't a black one on the lot. Cutie, winking. There wasn't a black one on the lot. Elvis handed me the keys, and I kissed him in gratitude, and there were tears in my eyes. He also gave me a check for $500 to help my parents defray their expenses as they had flown out in order to drive my new car back to California. And wasn't that sweet? He just thinks of everything. He thinks it all through and all the logistics. So, gosh, just such a great person. Later that night, in the wee hours, around 4 o'clock in the morning, after I had checked into the Howard Johnson Motel in Memphis, I received an eerie phone call from a strange woman who sounded like a man. "I saw him give you the car. I followed you from the gate. You wouldn't want nothing to happen to that car, would you?" Her voice croaked and she spoke haltingly. Oh my God, that's creepy. I hung up on her and tossed and turned for the next few hours, wondering if my car would survive the night, and more importantly, if I would. Well, the car and I survived, but when I got home, I found it wouldn't fit in my garage because of its size. So I built a garage just to house my gift from Elvis. I wanted to protect it, not so much because it was beautiful and expensive, but because it was a symbol of his loving generosity and my ability, at last, to accept a gift from him as his way of expressing thanks to God for all the blessings he had enjoyed while on this earth. I remember when I got the car, I told Elvis I wanted to put a plaque or something inside the car saying it was a gift from my good friend Elvis Presley. "No," he said, "don't put my name on it. All good gifts come from God." Wow. That is great. I'm going to read that last chapter again because this is what he was letting God use him to bless others. He was a channel for God to use to bless others. That's what he felt he was here to do. Whether it's through his singing, blessing others through him, through his singing, performing, entertaining, being on TV, a movie, even though he didn't like those movies, they're very entertaining to us today, in this day and time. They're lighthearted fun. Some of them are very good drama. King Creole, for instance. Jailhouse Rock is great. Loving You is a great, fun movie. Follow That Dream is so good. Blue Hawaii is fun. That's a fun one. Girls, Girls, Girls is a fun one. G.I. Blues is a great, fun movie. Flaming Star is a serious movie, which is great. Anyway, God used him to entertain people on this earth, but he also used him to bless others financially. So let's read that one more time. And she built a larger garage because this was a very special gift of hers, or a very gift to her. I wanted to protect it, not so much because it was beautiful and expensive, but because it was a symbol of his loving generosity and my ability, at last, his loving generosity, and my ability at last to accept a gift from him as his way of expressing thanks to God for all the blessings he had enjoyed while on this earth. So thank you, Lord, for blessing me. So I'm going to bless others for all your blessings to me. So I am going to return that and bless others in your honor. That's what he was doing. I told Elvis I wanted to put a plaque or something inside the car saying it was a gift from my good friend Elvis Presley. No, he said, don't put my name on it. All good gifts come from God. So this is a gift from God to you, and he's using me to give it to you. That is amazing. What a good story. So that is the end of that chapter. So that was a chapter on his generosity. So many examples. And these are only the ones that she knows about. There's so many. But this is a lot of them. A lot of them. And look, later that night, around 4 o'clock in the morning, after I checked in the Howard Johnson Motel, she didn't even stay at his place. Maybe Ginger was there. I don't know. Ginger was there or not. She said she got it. When did she say? They had been talking about it. I think often of Baltimore just weeks before he died. So it was on that trip in June, I guess, when he was doing that tour in June, weeks before he died. He didn't do it. So it must have been when they were doing that tour in June, like when he went to Indianapolis and all that. It was probably right before that, or maybe, I don't know. But they must have flown back home. They may have flown up to Baltimore and did something and flew back. I don't know exactly. I'll have to look at his life, that book that has all the dates of his life. But anyway, such a good story. So, alrighty. Well, that's it. This has been an hour and a half. I know it's a long one, so hopefully you just cut it. Listened when you could. But if you're able to listen for an hour and a half, you got the whole chapter in one reading. All right. I'll talk with you guys later. I hope you enjoyed it. Bye.